Hey guys, Kevin is for The Affair, Season 2, Episode 3, and I was really looking forward to this episode, obviously. This is The Affair, it's a show I always look forward to, and this season has been really great so far. However, I knew this was going to be the first episode that didn't take place on the same day, and I was definitely interested in seeing what was going to happen. And this ended up being one of the more, I'd say, low-key episodes of The Affair. Not too much happened. We did go back to the classic Noah-Allison perspective, which I thought was pretty cool that we kind of went back to basics because, we got the Helen and Cole stuff out of the way. We'll go back to them. I think Helen is back next week, but this was more of one of the more low-key episodes of The Affair, which was fine. Not to say there weren't some big things that happened in this episode, there were, but this was not really an eventful episode. It was definitely more of one of the smaller episodes. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because I've told you guys this before. The Affair is a show where I think every conversation matters, and every conversation you have to listen intently to. So, honestly, I don't think this was a very low-key episode. It was definitely a smaller kind of episode, but I still thought it was a pretty great episode. It was definitely great to see Noah and Allison's perspective back, and it really felt like a Season 1 episode, which I loved. And let's get to this episode, which was fantastic, as usual, and of course, is The Affair. It's always great, and let's get into it. So we start off with Noah and Allison having a little sex on the couch. However, it's a little bit different because he seems really into it and she's kind of not. And in fact, the way she said, he asked her if she's okay and she's saying it feels great. But when she says it, she doesn't really seem like, it kind of seems like she's just saying it to make him happy, which I thought was interesting. And she even has an orgasm like really quickly, and I'm pretty sure she faked it. She did not seem like she was into sex at all, and I thought that was definitely very interesting that we saw that. And it might be because Allison is just, I don't know, we know that she's kind of lost right now, and she's kind of searching for meaning, so I think this is interesting. I mean, I'm sure she does enjoy sex with Noah, but she just really wasn't into it this time. And then after sex, Noah tells her that she's a real Sphinx, and basically, they then talk about talk of jumping in the pool, and it's an activity that Allison has not participated in. I think it's mainly because, one, her son drowned, and we know that she has a fear of water because of that. Um, that's probably why. But Noah wants to get her in there and playfully tries to drag her, and you can just tell that she very well, she very defensively tells him, no, I'm not into that. I don't want to do that. And Noah, we see, he swims, and he's then having underwater visions of a car running someone down. And what's interesting about this is that we know that Scotty Lockhart is going to die, and a lot of people are starting to think that this might be actually a flash forward, that Noah's actually picturing the future, which I think is really interesting, and I think it's interesting that we're seeing that. Definitely interesting that they're doing that. I don't really know how they're doing it, but I think that definitely is very interesting. Noah then gets back to the kitchen, is surprised to see that Allison has smothered whatever spiky edges were cropping up and is waiting for him in a dress, and they smile at each other, and he declares how much he loves being there with her and that they should stay forever. And she asks what Allison would be doing while Noah writes, and basically he says that she's his muse. It's a really sweet scene. I always really do like their scenes together, and especially now that they're officially together, we're getting a lot more of that this season, which I do like seeing. I think it's some of the best scenes on the show are just Noah and Allison talking to each other, definitely. Noah tells Allison that she can trust him with anything and tell him just one secret, and the secret she tells him that she hates beets, and I thought that was kind of funny. And, she wiggles out of this talk, reminding him that they're late for dinner at the big house, and he asks her what she'd say if he asked her to marry him, just randomly out of the blue asks her this question, and she jokingly responds would depend on the ring, and then we realize that he actually has a ring, so he proposes to her right then and there, which I'm not surprised by, because we know that Noah and Allison are married in the future. So he goes to Denise propose, and it was interesting that we saw this. I mean, obviously, this was something that we need to see because they need to connect the dots to the future. And we're told that it's been 6 weeks since basically, we find out that it's actually been 6 weeks since the events of the season 1 finale, and Noah chose to be with Allison. She's overwhelmed. It doesn't take long before answering yes, and she wants to marry him. And I thought that was definitely very interesting that she didn't take long. I thought she was going to take a while and, give him a whole speech and be like, this is too early and things like that. But she actually says yes, and I thought that was really interesting that she just flat out said yes without actually thinking about it, which Allison tends to do a lot, and I thought that was definitely very interesting. So they celebrate with Robert and Yvonne, who I'm really liking their characters, I have to say. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, what is their, why are they in this show? Again, every conversation really matters in this show. This is a show that's like that. And Yvonne wants the whole story. She asks them point blank, the whole story. She wants how they met, the details, etc. But of course, Noah's not going to tell her the actual story of how they were in an affair and everything. And he starts to do that, but Allison cuts him off immediately, starts to spin a romantic fable. And it's interesting how Allison is doing this. She's kind of pretending that she's making up a different story, and she seems a lot more confident about herself. And Noah looks a little taken aback as she invents a story of how they met at a lighthouse in the rain. And obviously, it's not true. It sounded pretty true, but we know, of course, it's not true. And Noah looks at her as he realizes just how well she can lie. She can lie very well. And what I find very interesting about that, and I think what the significance is of that, is, of course, in the future. For all we know, she could have been lying to the detective the entire time, for all we know, honestly. The fact that she can lie like this, I think, is definitely something to take into account, and I think is not something to just forget about. It's something that's very important, and I definitely feel we're going to get back to that at some point. Just the fact she can do that, I found very interesting. So Yvonne is also expressing interest in reading Noah's book, and Allison jumps in to say Noah doesn't let people read it before it's done, and, because, of course, he doesn't want Allison to read it, but that's because it's dedicated to her, and Noah hastily tells the powerful publishing lady that, of course, he'd make an exception for her, because she is a publisher, and he also registers that Allison is the only one at the table who goes for another glass of wine, and I thought that was interesting. And, I definitely thought that was interesting that we saw this, and he and Yvonne would retire to her study, and she tells him about the other authors that they've hosted, and they chat about Harry and how he and Noah don't agree about the ending, and Yvonne offers to look at the book and give him her opinion. And of course, we know what ending he picks, sort of, but we don't fully know what's going to happen here. And they're interrupted by Allison, who tries to get Noah out into the hallway quietly because Whitney has then arrived to stir up trouble, and this is when the episode just gets great. I really love Whitney. I know a lot of people find her very annoying. She's great, honestly. She is the definition of a typical teenager. I mean, just the way she goes in the mansion. She's like, you live in a freaking mansion. I thought that was great. And just, when Noah tells her that he's going to take her to her cabin, she's just like, ew, that's disgusting. And she's trying to find a way to get Noah to scramble, makes Noah scramble to get her away from Yvonne as soon as humanly possible. And, you can just tell right away, she wants nothing to do with Allison. She talks about her street skills, because she had to call a cab, and turns her nose up at the decorating while managing in one breath to trash Noah for calling Helen mom, and pivot to directly yelling at Allison. And, then we see Allison's ring, and she says that he's really stupid for doing this, that this is ridiculous, and definitely that was very interesting. And she attempts to text Helen this turn of events, but all the demanding that Allison takes off the ring, and Allison is saying that, she'll be outside. She doesn't want to get involved. I thought that was pretty funny. This whole scene was really funny. It was dramatic, but it was also very funny. But then it also gets kind of sad as well, because Noah really does care about Whitney. He still cares about his kids, and he wants them to be there. Obviously, he cares for them, and he knows that these relationships are very fractured, especially with Trevor, because obviously Trevor, things did not end up well there. Martin as well, it's very fractured with his kids right now. He's trying to go back to it, and it's kind of sad, but it's also kind of funny. Noah joins her after calming Whitney down, and Allison now thinks that they're making a mistake. She doesn't think this is right, and he guesses that something happened, and she asks him whether he really wants to know things about her, because, she didn't want to answer the question before, and then she tells him the truth, and I thought this was interesting when we found this out. We realized that she's actually slept with Oscar before, and, that's disgusting. I'm sorry. Oscar's disgusting. I hope we don't see him this season, because he's really disgusting, and I don't like him as a character, as we know. Oscar is he's very disgusting. Sometimes that's something good in this show, but he is still pretty disgusting. I don't really want to see him. And Noah's in no position to judge since, he was basically banging half in New York at the same time, if you remember. If you remember the finale, he was going, to women, to woman, to woman, to woman, and just having sex with them. And, he takes this pretty well, actually. She also tells him about that time she walked in the ocean looking to drown, and he tells her she can tell him anything and he won't give up on her. And I thought that was really sweet that he said that, just showing that no matter what she says, he's going to be with her. And she tells him that Cole, so basically she decides to tell him that Cole came to visit the week before and that she lied about it. And she tries to give the ring back. She wants to give him a chance to get out. He asks if she's trying to get rid of him and makes a very pretty speech about wanting to start over with her. And he doesn't care that there are some things that she's not going to tell him. He doesn't want her to hide anything. He doesn't want secrets. And I like seeing that from Noah. That's something I definitely really like. A lot of people say Noah's an asshole. He really isn't. I think Noah, he can be kind of overstepping sometimes and kind of very egocentric, but in the long run, he does care about Allison, he does care about his family, and the people that are in his life, he really does care about, and that's something I definitely really do like seeing, I have to say. At the end of the day, his family comes first, and he really does care about that, and I like seeing that. So, she tries to give the ring back, and he begs her not to mess around, and we cut to the train station where Noah is with Whitney, and this was kind of a really sweet scene. I really enjoyed this. She doesn't want to live at home anymore because, of course, Margaret and Helen are basically at each other's throats, and she feels like she's living in a coven of depressed witches, and she even tries to tell her dad it's affecting her schoolwork, and, which I thought was kind of interesting, and, he says maybe if she promises not to tell Helen that he's living with Allison, she might be able to stay there, and, she tells him not to worry, and, while Whitney is a bit of a bitch, she really is, she basically is a typical teenager. I think she does, what she's saying about, affecting her schoolwork and how she doesn't really want to live there, I think that really is true. I don't think Whitney should live there. It's just not really safe for her to do that. So in the city, Noah meets up with Max. Apparently, they haven't seen each other in a while, which is understandable. Max has been with Helen, which I don't know if Noah knows about. He doesn't tell Noah in this episode that he's with Helen, and that definitely is going to be a problem for Noah and Max. I don't see things going well there. We realize that Max has gotten richer and is seeing someone. Of course, we know who it is, but he doesn't tell him that it's Helen, and obviously, Max is really happy, so happy, in fact, that when Noah tells him he just needs to figure out a way to afford an apartment, Max instantly gets $50K, just like that, randomly. He gets it wired into his account, and this is self-serving on Max's part. He says the sooner him and Helen get divorced, the happier everyone will be. Noah then shows up to the mediator's office, where no one appears to be, and instead he gets served divorce papers, and we realize that Helen's lawyer is John Gottlieb. That's how John came into the picture, because he was the other mediator, because of course she didn't like the other one. So we now have John here, and apparently Helen wants to sue Noah, and that's basically how Noah's perspective ends. Yeah, we don't get a flash forward in Noah's perspective. We get it in Allison's perspective, which I thought was very interesting, and I kind of liked it because it connected the two halves together. Now, Allison's, I will say, was a bit more interesting than Noah's. Noah's was still great, but what happened with Allison this episode, I thought was even more interesting than what was going on with Noah. Not just because it was longer, but I did feel it was just a bit more interesting. So Allison remembers the dinner between Robert and Yvonne. She declines another drink of wine, and basically Yvonne starts pushing for a wedding on the property, and she and Robert bicker back and forth affectionately, and, Yvonne's telling her no rush unless she's pregnant, and Allison hastily denies this. Robert's horrified, and Noah's saying that, he has 4 kids, he thinks he's done, and that, of course, is news to Allison. She didn't know that he had 4 kids. She didn't know this, and that he doesn't want to have another kid, which we know that they do, because we've clearly seen, we saw Allison hold that baby in last week's episode, so I'm assuming that's her and Noah's kid. She and Noah then look at each other quizzically across the table for an important issue to discuss before getting engaged, if for no other reason than to be able to present a united front at a dinner table. And Yvonne is telling her to just get pregnant and he'll roll with it. And then Robert finally cuts his wife off from the booze. And you can tell that Yvonne is horribly drunk at this point. She's just going to say whatever comes out of her mouth, and she doesn't care. She really has no filter because she's drunk out of her mind, and she's not going to listen to anything anyone tells her, which I thought was pretty funny, and I enjoyed seeing that. She pulls Noah into her study to talk about the book, and Allison and Robert head to the kitchen, and Robert says that books people are so snooty, they bind a bit, and then when he asks for scraps for a plastic bag, he lets her in on the secret of his dog, Pete, and Pete is part wolf and sounds rad and has run off, and Yvonne thinks that this dog is dangerous, and because he snapped at their grandchild once, but Robert thinks he's just misunderstood. He wasn't meant to be caged or put on a leash, and this is kind of a metaphor for Allison. As I said, every conversation show means something, that I think that kind of is showing something with Allison, how Allison's kind of, cooped up in this house. She has nowhere else to go, and she doesn't want to be that way. I mean, it definitely shows that here. Because, we see how alone Allison is. Again, she's very alone when she's not with Noah, and he puts out scraps for Pete so that he doesn't get hungry, and that's when Whitney shows up. And in this, it's very different with Whitney. It's not focusing on Noah, it's obviously focusing on the Allison of it all. And Whitney's wearing a much more classy dress, which I think is bullshit. I think the dress that we saw her in, the very short dress that she was wearing, that was very see-through and noticeable, that's probably the dress she visited Noah in. Whitney is very trashy, and that's just how Whitney is. I mean, that's how she is. And we cut to them back in the cabin where Noah and Whitney talk outside, but their words drift back to Allison, and Whitney's saying that she's a stupid fucking waitress, and that she is a slut, and that you shouldn't trust her, and she's just, she's saying everything that comes, she's just going nuts at this point. Allison opens the box, pulls out a stone, and the deck conversation between Noah and Allison is quite different here, because Noah seems a lot less confident in their plans, and they both seem a little battered and sad and confused, and she asks him what was the worst thing he's ever done, and he says that this was, and Allison says she's done a lot of things, and of course we know about Oscar, she doesn't say it in this, and in Allison's recollection, that's as far as this conversation goes. She doesn't remember the rest of it, probably because she doesn't want to. That's why I'm thinking we don't see the rest of the conversation, because I don't feel like Allison wants to remember her telling Noah all the bad things that's happened to her, obviously. Nobody wants to remember that, and Allison, at this point, but again, we know that she's lying, so for all we know, this could be completely fake, and I feel like some of these details are definitely fake. She sleeps on a couch, wakes up to a whole new personality of Whitney, and Whitney's actually happy, and I'm like, oh shit, this is not gonna end well, because Whitney is definitely up to something. You can just tell, Whitney's up to something here, and she tells Whitney she's not into the whole evil stepmother thing, and she just wants to be her friend, and Whitney gives her this really creepy grin, like, very cringeworthy, you can tell it's fake, and she tells her if she just wants to be her friend, she says she needs to get down. She basically tells her that she has a favor. She wants to get in touch with Scotty because he changed his phone number and there's a restraining order against him coming near her. And I love how she's like, oh, no, that was just made by my grandmother, but, that's nothing. I thought that was really funny because, she has a restraining order against her, but she doesn't think anything of it. That's just typical Whitney for you. The fact that she doesn't think anything of this restraining order and she's just like, fuck it, I have a restraining order, who cares? I thought that was definitely very funny. And we realize that Whitney thinks she's in love with him pretty much, which I feel like Scotty doesn't have the same feelings for her. She thinks that she's in love with him, and she manipulates Allison masterfully, doing whatever she can to do this, and Allison doesn't really do anything here. And then we see Allison is helping organizing manuscripts, but Yvonne is way more interested in the drama from last night. She's distracted by the physical therapist storming off after getting fired by Robert when she gets a call from a neighbor. And apparently a dog that looked like Pete murdered all their chickens, and they argue about the dog catcher, and if he finds Pete, he'll put him down. So they pull Allison into it, and finally Robert is going to say that he's going to kill his own dog, and Yvonne retires to read a memoir by a tsunami survivor, and Allison gets sent out with Robert to basically go kill the dog. And I don't know why Allison wanted to do this. It's kind of weird, but I guess, again, Allison is just so cooped up that she wants to go outside, because we know that Allison is an outdoorsy person. She likes to go outside, she likes to experience the outdoors, and it's something that she hasn't gotten to do, and she wants to do that. So they walk through some woods, and I really like this conversation between her and Robert. It's very interesting. She's a lot more open with him, even more than she was with Noah, and she tells Robert she doesn't want to get married again, and explains that she was married, and, we find out why she really doesn't want to. She says she was once married before, and obviously it didn't go well with Cole, and she talks about the whole story with Gabriel, and when I say the whole story, I mean the whole story, more than she's even told Noah, which, we find out that Gabriel had a secondary drowning, which that's awful that they had to go through that. And again, this is something that Noah doesn't know, and I feel like the reason she doesn't want to tell him is because she just doesn't want to bring it up, she doesn't want to chance it, she doesn't want to ruin things with Noah, and that's why she can never tell him. She needs to tell him this stuff, though, and Robert is very sympathetic, obviously, and, he says that's the worst thing in the world, and it turns out that the stone she's been carrying was Gabriel's. That's the stone she has, and Allison says she thought that if she went somewhere else or was with someone else, she'd feel differently, but now is realizing it's not so easy, and Noah just doesn't quite understand that, and Robert counsels that sometimes we don't have to have our person understand absolutely everything about us. And I do agree with Robert. I mean, sometimes, even though you might have a great bond with someone, they might not fully understand you because they're not you. They can't get into your head. They obviously can't read your mind. And I think Noah and Allison, while they truly do love each other, they're never going to be able to fully understand each other just because they have so much going on. And, he said it's okay to be baffled sometimes by the person you love, and it's really interesting advice, and it gets more depressing about how lonely life is, but the bottom line is that marriage can help you feel less lonely, so I thought that was interesting. And then we hear the dog Pete, and they head to a meadow, and we see the dog comes bounding in, and it's delighted to see Robert, and it was and I thought that he was going to kill this dog, and I was like, holy shit, don't kill this dog. But Robert doesn't kill the dog. He scrambles off more chickens in his horizons, and Pete goes after the chickens, and I thought that was pretty funny that he just let the dog Pete go after the chickens like that. I mean, he obviously wasn't going to do that in front of Allison. I think he just knew that Allison has already faced enough trauma. He didn't want to do that to her, and I thought that was good of him to do that. So Allison decides to face her own fears. She was going to go over it. She pulls off her clothes, jumps in the pool, for a swim, and it's a really nice scene. It's quiet and peaceful. She floats on her back, looks at the sky, and it's something that she hasn't wanted to do, and that she's told herself she's not going to do for a while unless she tried to commit suicide. But I think this is just her saying, I want to get rid of all those terrible things that I'm holding back and just move forward. It really seems like that's what both Noah and Allison are trying to do. They're trying to move forward, and Noah especially is trying to move forward. Allison seems like she wants to, but she's just got so much going on, and she has so much going through her head that it's hard to, and she definitely is starting to. And Noah then comes home, sends her in there, and he takes off his clothes, joins her. They start having sex in the pool. And it's really interesting. And then Robert comes out to the front steps, takes a look into the distance, turns around and goes back inside. I don't know what the point of that was. It was kind of strange. I don't know if he sees them there. If he is, that's really creepy, but whatever. I don't really know what they're trying to show there, but whatever. And then we get to the future. Now, this was really interesting. This was probably the longest time we've had in the future. Usually, the future scenes, they last about 1 to 2 minutes, and this lasted, I'd say, a good 5 minutes. And next week, it looks like we're really going to start to focus more on the trial. We see John, he has them sit to talk about the case, and of course, we didn't get a flash forward in Noah's perspective. That's probably why this was longer. And he talks about the case, and it's time to tell them what really happened. And Noah tells him that he didn't kill Scotty. And, John does not believe him. He's saying, tell me another one. And we find out that the wedding this occurred on was not Scott and Allison's wedding. It was instead Cole's wedding. And that makes things really interesting. Because with it being Cole's wedding, this could be a character we don't even know that killed Scotty. And that could be very interesting that we haven't even met yet. It could be Robert or Yvonne for all we know. I mean, honestly, that could be why we're focusing on them so much. I've told you guys, this is a show where you don't really know who to trust. And Noah doesn't know why they were invited, but he was in a bad mood. And he and Allison had a fight, and she left. And, basically, I like that we find out the story here. Noah says he went to look for her, hit a deer, and he asks, he has this, we were wondering if, Scotty was riding the deer at the time, and we're reminded that the mechanic sold Noah out, but why on earth was he bribing the mechanic? And Noah's saying that he knew it would look bad, his daughter was involved with him, and no one would believe him, and it's not the best, I'd say, defense, but, I mean, we know that Noah obviously didn't do it. I don't think he did it. But the flash forwards he's having, I honestly feel maybe he did do it. I don't know. Remember, Allison's a good liar. So Allison gives him a look, and the lawyer asks, well, time to find out who did. And that's how the episode ends. So we now know some more information that this was Cole's wedding. And I don't think that Cole, I still feel that Cole framed Noah. Just the look he had on his face last week, I feel like Cole was the one that framed Noah. And why do I think he did? Because he hates Noah, obviously. And he didn't even want to be there. Noah said he did not want to be at that wedding, but they did it because it was just the right thing to do, and, he was trying to be nice, and that's why Cole did that, and Cole is just a nice guy. I'm not saying that Noah isn't a nice guy. I mean, sometimes, yeah, I can see how he's kind of an asshole. I can see that. But, again, I think the rage could really get to Cole, and I don't think that Cole shouldn't be discounted here. I think Cole should be included in the people that could have murdered Scotty. I think Cole definitely is up there with those people, and I think Cole did, in fact, murder Scotty. I'm going to say right now, I think he did. I'm not going to, I'm not going to say it's official, I'm not going to confirm anything, but I do feel like he is probably one of the people that we can think killed Scotty. Definitely, I think he could have done it. We know that Allison's a very good liar. Now, do you think that she's been lying about some things to Jeffries? I mean, Jeffries has obviously been lying to them, so I feel like maybe she's been lying about some things. We'll have to see what happens with that. That's going to be very interesting. Robert and Yvonne. Do you think that they somehow fit into this murder? I feel like they do. I feel like we can't just have this expansion of them and not actually have them fit into this. So we'll have to see what happens with them. I like where they're going with Robert and Yvonne. Why Robert is watching Noah and Allison have sex in a pool, I don't know, but that was kind of weird. I do like seeing Yvonne be the publisher, though, for Noah, and I think Noah... What's interesting is that I kind of feel like Noah's going to pick Yvonne over Max, over Harry, because Yvonne seems like she enjoys the book a lot more than Harry does. Harry seems to like the book, but Yvonne is a publisher, and maybe he could even get advice from Yvonne. You never know. We obviously know that they do get married, so that happens there. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. Is Noah going to be able to repair the relationship with his kids? Obviously, he wants to, but I don't know if it's possible. Just everything they've been through and everything that he's done, I don't know if they're going to be able to get that bond back ever. I hope they can, but I don't know at this point. I really, hope it goes well for them. I'm rooting for things to go well for Noah. But at this point, I just don't know if they're going to be able to repair that damage that they have right now. We're going to have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, amazing episode. Really did love it. It looks like next week we're going to focus on Helen and then the trial. That's what it looks like. We're focusing on the trial in a very big way next week, which makes sense because obviously the trial is a huge deal and we can't do it upon multiple episodes. It has to be one episode, and I feel like next week we're definitely going to have a more clear idea of what's fully going on with this whole murder. We're starting to get some pieces together, which I definitely like seeing. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I thought this was by far one of the best episodes of the season. I really am loving this season, I have to say. And we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Awkward, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.